My parents flew my cheating ex to Christmas because he's still real family. I'd been paying their property taxes. January 2nd, they got a notice from the county. I blocked their numbers when they started begging. I, 29, female, never thought I'd be writing something like this. But after what happened over Christmas, I need to get this off my chest because the audacity of my family still has me seeing red 3 weeks later. I've been staring at this blank screen for hours, trying to figure out how to even begin explaining the level of betrayal and entitlement I've experienced from the people who are supposed to love me most. For context, I need to explain the family dynamics that led to this complete shit show. My parents, both 58, have always been the type to prioritize appearances over everything else. They live in this pristine suburban house in one of those neighborhoods where everyone judges you based on your lawn care and the year of your car. Dad inherited the house from his parents back in the 90s. It's prime real estate worth probably $800,000 now, maybe more with how crazy the market's been. The problem is they've never been great with money, despite both having decent jobs. Dad works in middle management at a manufacturing company, pulling in around $75,000 a year. Mom's a high school administrator, making about $65,000. Sounds like good money, right? Should be enough for two people to live comfortably, but they've always lived beyond their means, trying to keep up with neighbors who make twice what they do. About 5 years ago, they started having serious financial problems. Credit cards maxed out, car payments they couldn't afford, the works. Mom had to have a new car every 3 years because what would the neighbors think if she drove something older? Dad insisted on the premium cable package and the expensive lawn service because appearances mattered more than their bank account. They were drowning in debt, but refused to change their lifestyle. The final straw was when they got behind on property taxes. In our county, if you don't pay property taxes for 3 years, they can literally auction your house off on the courthouse steps. My parents were looking at losing the family home that had been in our family for 2 generations. They were panicking, talking about bankruptcy, considering a reverse mortgage. It was a complete mess. That's when I stepped in like an idiot. I'd been doing really well for myself. I'm a software engineer and had just landed a senior position at a major tech company. My salary had jumped to $95,000 plus bonuses and stock options. I was making good money and didn't have many expenses since I was single and living in a modest one-bedroom apartment. I drove a reliable Honda Civic that was paid off, cooked most of my meals at home, and my biggest splurge was my gaming setup. When I saw my parents struggling, drowning in their own financial incompetence, I offered to take over their property tax payments. We're talking about $8,400 a year. Not nothing, but manageable for me at the time. I remember the conversation clearly. We were sitting in their kitchen and Mom was crying about how embarrassed she'd be if they lost the house. Dad kept saying they'd figure something out, but I could see the desperation in his eyes. I can cover the property taxes, I said, just until you guys get back on your feet. The relief on their faces was immediate. Mom hugged me and called me her hero. Dad actually teared up and said I was the best daughter a man could ask for. They promised it would only be temporary, maybe a year or two at most. They swore they'd get their finances in order and eventually take the payments back over. I set up automatic payments from my checking account directly to the county treasurer's office. The money would come out every January like clockwork. My parents were incredibly grateful at first. They'd thank me constantly, tell people what a wonderful daughter they had, brag about how successful I'd become. That was 5 years ago. They never did get their chemin together. The credit cards stayed maxed out. They kept the expensive car payments. Dad refused to give up his premium everything. Mom kept shopping like money wasn't an issue, but I didn't mind paying the taxes. It felt good to help family, and I figured when they eventually sold the house or passed away, I'd get some of it back anyway. The house was in Dad's name, and I was the only child, so it seemed like a safe investment. What I didn't anticipate was how they'd start treating me once the payments became routine. The gratitude faded. The thanks stopped. It became an expectation rather than a gift. They started acting like it was my responsibility to keep paying, like I owed them something. Now, about my ex-boyfriend, James. We dated for 3.5 years, and for most of that time I thought he was the love of my life. Met him in college during my senior year. He was a junior studying marketing. He was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. handsome in that effortless way some men have, charming enough to win over anyone within minutes of meeting them, came from a good upper-middle-class family in the suburbs. James had this way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. He'd remember little details about people's lives, ask about their kids or their jobs, bring homemade cookies to gatherings. My parents absolutely loved him from day one. Actually, loved might be an understatement. They practically worshipped him. Mom was constantly talking about wedding plans and grandchildren whenever James was around. She'd make little comments like, "when you two get married," instead of "if you get married." She started buying little decorative items that she said would look perfect in our future home. Dad would light up whenever James complimented his grilling or asked his advice about car troubles. James ate up the attention and became like a third child to them. He'd call my mom just to chat, send them both birthday cards, remember their anniversary. When Mom had minor surgery to remove some polyps, James brought flowers and stayed at the hospital for hours. When Dad's favorite uncle died, James took time off work to attend the funeral with us. The relationship wasn't perfect. No relationship is, but I thought we were solid. We had the usual couple fights about whose turn it was to do dishes, whether to watch Netflix or go out. Typical mundane stuff. We talked about marriage constantly. I knew exactly what ring I wanted because I'd shown him Pinterest boards. We'd discussed kids. He wanted 2. I wanted 3. We figured we'd compromise. We talked about buying a house together, maybe getting a dog first, to practice being responsible for another living thing. I was planning to accept a proposal last Christmas. He'd hinted he had something big planned. A vintage Art Deco setting with a 1-carat diamond was exactly what I'd been dreaming about. He'd already talked to my dad, gotten his blessing. He said he had the whole thing planned out. Christmas morning, after opening presents with my parents, a walk around the neighborhood to work off breakfast, and a proposal at the little gazebo in the park where we'd had our first official date. James knew my parents well, obviously. He'd come to family dinners at least twice a month. He helped my mom with cooking during holidays, made the best green bean casserole I've ever tasted. He was completely integrated into our family traditions. He knew that Dad liked his coffee strong in the morning, that Mom preferred white wine over red, that I got grumpy if I had to wake up before 9 a.m. on weekends. For 3.5 years, he was part of the family. He had his own stocking at Christmas. Mom bought him birthday presents. Dad would text him directly to ask if he wanted help changing the oil in his car. He wasn't just my boyfriend. He was genuinely part of our family unit. Then in March of last year, everything fell apart in the most devastating way possible. I'd been in Seattle for a work conference, a 3-day technical summit that was supposed to help our team learn about new development frameworks. The conference was boring as hell, but my company was paying for everything, so I figured I'd stick it out. On the second day, they announced that the third day was canceled due to some issue with the keynote speaker having a family emergency. I was actually relieved. I could catch an earlier flight home and surprise James with an extra day together. We'd been texting throughout the conference, and he'd mentioned he was having a tough week at work. I thought coming home early would be a nice surprise. I caught a red-eye flight that got me home around 6 a.m. on Wednesday instead of Thursday evening as planned. I was exhausted, but excited to see him. I'd picked up some of those fancy chocolates he loves from the airport gift shop, the ones that cost $30 for a tiny box but taste like heaven. I used my key to let myself into my apartment quietly, thinking he might still be asleep. We'd been living together for about 2 years at that point. He'd gradually moved more and more of his stuff over until it didn't make sense for him to keep paying rent on his own place. The living room was a mess. James's clothes scattered around, 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, music still playing softly from his phone. I figured he'd had his friend over for a night in. That happened sometimes when I was traveling. I headed toward the bedroom to drop off my bag and change clothes, maybe make some coffee and wake James up with breakfast in bed. I was feeling romantic, grateful to have someone to come home to. That's when I heard the voices from the bedroom. James's voice, breathy, and definitely not asleep. And a woman's voice, a voice I recognized. Emma from 4B, my neighbor, the one I'd helped move her couch just 2 months earlier, the one who borrowed my jumper cables when her car wouldn't start, the one I'd invited to our Super Bowl party. I stood frozen in the hallway for probably 30 seconds, listening to sounds that left no doubt about what was happening in my bed. The bed I'd bought, the The bed where James told me he loved me every night. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, pretend I'd never seen it, come back later, and act surprised when he wasn't there. But I couldn't move. I just stood there listening to my boyfriend getting IA by my neighbor in my bed. When I finally pushed open the bedroom door, they were so into it, they didn't even notice me at first. It wasn't until I dropped my bag that they realized they weren't alone. The look on James's face wasn't guilt or shame like you'd expect. It was annoyance, like I'd interrupted something important. "What the hell are you doing here?" he said, pulling the sheet over himself. "You're not supposed to be back until tomorrow." Emma scrambled to get her clothes, muttering apologies. "This isn't what it looks like," which was pretty and hilarious considering I'd walked in on them mid-act. "Conference got canceled," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded inside. I felt like I was having a heart attack. "How long has this been going on?" James sat up straighter, and I could see him calculating what to say. We didn't mean for this to happen." "How long?" I repeated. Emma was almost dressed by then, looking like she wanted to crawl under the bed and disappear. "Get the camion out of my apartment," I said to her. She didn't argue, grabbed her shoes, and practically ran for the door. That left James and me alone for the worst conversation of my life. The confrontation that followed was brutal and eye-opening. James initially tried to deny what I'd obviously just witnessed with my own eyes. "It's not what you think," he said, which would have been laughable if it weren't so insulting. "I walked in on you and my neighbor in my bed. What exactly am I supposed to think?" Then he switched tactics and tried to blame me. "You're never here. You work all the time. I felt lonely, and Emma was just there." "So that makes it okay? You've been cheating on me because I work too much?" "Not cheating exactly. More like we grew apart, and I found comfort with someone else." I just stared at him. "How long, James?" He wrapped the sheet tighter around himself and looked away. "It doesn't matter." "How long?" "A few months." "How many months?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally he whispered, 8 months. 8 months. 8 months of him looking me in the eye every morning and telling me he loved me. 8 months of making plans for our future. 8 months of me thinking about saying yes to a proposal while he was screwing someone else behind my back. 8 months, I repeated. So, basically since last summer. It wasn't supposed to happen, it just did. Then he tried the crying manipulation route. He started sobbing about how sorry he was, how it didn't mean anything, how Emma was just a friend who'd been there when he needed someone. He begged me not to throw away 3.5 years over a mistake. A mistake that lasted 8 months isn't a mistake, James. It's a choice. 8 months of choices. When the tears didn't work, he got vicious. That's when I saw who he really was underneath all that charm. "You know what? Fine. You want the truth? I haven't been happy for a long time. You're boring. You're predictable. All you care about is work and your stupid video games. Emma makes me feel alive. She's spontaneous and fun and actually pays attention to me. If you were so unhappy, why didn't you just break up with me?" "Because I loved your family. Your parents are amazing. Your mom treats me like a son. I didn't want to lose that." That hit me like a punch to the gut. He'd been staying with me not because he loved me, but because he loved my family. "And Emma, what's she give you that I don't?" He looked me dead in the eye and said, "She's better in bed. Real class act." That's when I completely lost it. I started screaming at him to get out, throwing his clothes at him, telling him he had 1 hour to pack his and disappear from my life. He kept trying to argue, kept saying we could work through this, kept insisting it was just a mistake. I kicked him out that night. He'd been basically living with me for 2 years, so he had a lot of stuff to move. I gave him a week to get everything out, which was honestly more generous than he deserved. Every time he came back for more of his things, he'd try to start another conversation about working things out. I'd just leave the apartment and go to a coffee shop until he was done. The hardest part was finding little reminders of him everywhere. His favorite coffee mug, books he'd left on my nightstand, a sweater in my closet that still smelled like his cologne. It took weeks to get all traces of him out of my place. What really twisted the knife was that he moved in with Emma almost immediately. Like within a week of our breakup, he was posting pictures on Instagram of him cooking dinner in her kitchen, wearing her shirts, looking completely happy and unbothered. Meanwhile, I was falling apart. I'd lost the man I thought I was going to marry, found out my neighbor was a snake, and discovered that my entire relationship had been a lie for the better part of a year. Here's where things got complicated with my family, and where I should have seen the red flags. When I called my parents to tell them what happened, their reaction was completely unexpected and hurtful in ways I'm still processing. I drove over to their house the day after I caught James cheating. I was exhausted, hadn't slept, and felt like my entire world had collapsed. I needed my parents, needed their support, their outrage on my behalf, their comfort. I needed them to be parents. I found them in the kitchen, Mom making her famous Sunday morning pancakes, Dad reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. For a moment, seeing them in their normal routine, I felt a tiny bit better. This was home. These people loved me unconditionally. "Hey, kiddo," Dad said, looking up from his paper. "You look terrible. Everything okay?" I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd done homework for 12 years, where we'd had countless family meals and conversations. James and I broke up. Mom immediately stopped what she was doing and turned around. "Oh no, what happened? Was it just a fight? You two seemed so happy last weekend." I took a deep breath. I caught him cheating on me with Emma, my neighbor. The silence that followed was deafening. I expected immediate outrage. I expected them to be furious on my behalf. I expected comfort and support. Instead, Dad set down his coffee cup carefully and said, "Are you sure? Maybe it wasn't what you thought." I walked in on them in my bed. "Dad, there's no misunderstanding what I saw." Mom came over and sat next to me, but instead of pulling me into a hug, she had this weird, careful expression on her face. "Honey, relationships are complicated. Sometimes people make mistakes when they're going through a difficult time." "Mistakes?" He's been screwing her for 8 months. 8 months? Mom looked genuinely shocked. "Are you sure?" "He said 8 months, pretty sure, yeah." There was another long pause. Then Dad cleared his throat. "Well, that's unfortunate, but sometimes when couples have been together for a long time, they go through rough patches. Maybe this is something you two could work through with counseling." I stared at him. "Work through? He cheated on me for 8 months. "People make poor choices when they're unhappy," Mom said softly. "Maybe he was trying to tell you something about the relationship." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of being supportive, they were immediately making excuses for James and suggesting that somehow this was partially my fault. "So you think I should forgive him for cheating?" "I think," Dad said carefully, "that James has been like family to us for years. He's a good man who probably made a bad decision. If you love someone, you fight for them." "He doesn't love me, Dad. He told me he's been unhappy for months and only stayed because he likes you guys." That seemed to hit them both strangely. They exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "Well," Mom said finally, "I'm sure he was just lashing out because he felt cornered. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. When I made it clear that walking in on your boyfriend getting railed by another woman isn't really something you work through, my mom got quiet for a moment, then said something that should have been my first clue about what was coming. "Well, James has been like family to us for years. We can't just cut him off completely." I thought she meant they'd be polite if they ran into him around town or something. Maybe they'd ask mutual friends how he was doing. I thought it was just them being kind people who'd grown attached to someone over 3.5 years. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. Over the next few weeks, I started to realize they weren't just being polite. They were actively maintaining a relationship with him. It started small. Mom mentioned running into James at the grocery store and that he seemed to be doing well. Then Dad mentioned that James had texted him to thank him for helping him understand some car trouble he was having. Little things that could be explained away as just being friendly to someone they'd known for years. But then it escalated. I found out Mom was texting James regularly, not just responding when he reached out, but initiating conversations, asking how he was settling into his new living situation with Emma, asking about his job, sending him funny memes and pictures of the family dog. When I confronted Mom about it, she got defensive. "He's been part of our family for 3.5 years. We care about him. Just because you two broke up doesn't mean we have to stop caring." "But he cheated on me, Mom. He hurt me. Doesn't that matter to you?" "Of course it matters. But he's probably hurting too. Breakups are hard on everyone." "He's hurting? He's the one who cheated." "People make mistakes, honey. Holding grudges isn't healthy." That conversation was the first time I realized my parents valued their relationship with James more than their loyalty to me. It stung in a way I wasn't prepared for. Over the next few months, I learned that my parents were still in regular contact with him. Mom would text him, invite him to lunch, ask how he was doing. When I confronted them about it, Dad said, "Just because you two broke up doesn't mean we have to lose someone we care about." I tried to explain how incredibly hurtful this was. This man had cheated on me, humiliated me, And now my own parents were maintaining a relationship with him like nothing happened. Mom's response was that I was being immature and holding grudges. She said James had made a mistake, but was clearly sorry about it. Sorry about it. James had never once apologized to me, never even acknowledged that what he did was wrong. He'd actually doubled down, posting pictures of him and Emma all over social media within weeks of our breakup. But my parents didn't want to hear any of that. They'd made up their minds that James was the victim somehow, and I was being unreasonable. Things got worse over the summer. I found out James had been to several family barbecues. My mom posted pictures on Facebook of James helping in the kitchen, James laughing with my cousins, James fitting right back into family gatherings like he'd never destroyed my relationship and broken my heart. When I saw those pictures, I called my mom immediately. "You invited James to Uncle Mike's birthday party?" "Well, yes. He's always been close to Uncle Mike. It would have been rude not to invite him." "It's rude to me. I'm your daughter. You chose not to come to the party." "We weren't going to change our guest list based on your absence." That was the moment I realized my parents valued their relationship with my cheating ex-boyfriend more than their relationship with me. It hurt in a way I can't even describe. I started declining family invitations, couldn't handle the thought of showing up and seeing James there playing happy family with my parents. When they asked why I wasn't coming around as much, I was honest. They said I was being ridiculous and needed to get over it. Fall was relatively quiet. I focused on work, started dating again, tried to rebuild my life. I was actually doing pretty well. I started seeing a therapist to work through the trust issues, joined a hiking group, was genuinely moving forward. Then Christmas planning started. In November, Mom called to discuss Christmas dinner plans. "We're doing the usual crowd," she said. "Your cousins, Uncle Mike and Aunt Linda, Grandma Ruth, if she's feeling up to it." "Sounds good," I said. "What can I bring?" "Actually, we need to talk about something. James is going to be joining us this year." I thought I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "James is going to be here for Christmas. He doesn't have anywhere else to go. His parents are spending Christmas in Florida and didn't invite him. We couldn't just leave him alone for the holidays." "Mom, are you insane? He cheated on me. He's not family anymore." "He is to us. We've maintained a relationship with him independent of you. Just because you can't forgive doesn't mean we have to cut him out of our lives." I was speechless for a moment. Then I said, "If James is there, I won't be." "Don't be dramatic. You're both adults. You can be civil for one day." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm not spending Christmas watching my parents fawn over the man who cheated on me. It's not happening." "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but James confirmed weeks ago, and we're not going to uninvite him because you can't handle being in the same room." I hung up. I was shaking with anger and hurt. My own parents were choosing my cheating ex over me for Christmas. Dad called an hour later. "Your mother told me about your conversation. I think you're overreacting." "I'm overreacting? You're inviting my cheating ex to Christmas instead of your daughter." "We're not choosing him over you. We're trying to include everyone. Everyone except me, apparently, since you know I won't come if he's there. That's your choice. We're not going to let your bitterness ruin Christmas for everyone else." My bitterness. Like I was the unreasonable one for not wanting to spend Christmas with my cheating ex. I didn't talk to them for 2 weeks after that. They never called to apologize or reconsider, just radio silence. Then in early December, I found out the full extent of their betrayal. My cousin Emma called me. "Dude, I need to tell you something. Your parents bought James a plane ticket to come for Christmas." Apparently, James had moved to Denver a few months earlier for a job. He'd been complaining on social media about having to spend Christmas alone since his parents had excluded him from their Florida trip. My parents saw this and decided to buy him a round-trip ticket to come home for Christmas. They spent $400 on plane tickets for my cheating ex-boyfriend to attend Christmas instead of their daughter. I was done, completely done. I called the county tax office the next day and canceled the automatic payment for my parents' property taxes. The woman on the phone confirmed that the next payment wasn't due until January 15th and that there was no penalty for canceling the auto pay. I also called my bank and put a stop payment on any future payments to the county for that property. After 5 years and over $42,000 of my money, I was finished subsidizing my parents' lifestyle while they treated me like garbage. I didn't tell them what I'd done. I figured they'd find out soon enough. Christmas came and went. I spent it with friends. Had a great time skiing in Vermont. Posted some pictures on social media of me looking happy and relaxed. Didn't think about my family or James once. January 2nd, my phone started ringing. Mom called first around 10 o'clock a.m. "We need to talk. Can you come over?" Not really in the mood to chat right now. This is serious. We got a notice from the county about property taxes. I felt a little surge of satisfaction. Oh, what kind of notice? It says the payment was missed and there's a late fee, but that's impossible. You've been paying them automatically for years. Weird. Can you call the county and sort this out? There must be some mistake. Actually, there's no mistake. I canceled the payments in December. Silence. Then, you what? I canceled the automatic payments for your property taxes. I'm not paying them anymore. You can't just, why would you? This is our house, and James is apparently more family to you than I am, so you can figure out how to pay for your house yourselves. You're being ridiculous. You can't hold our house hostage because of some stupid relationship drama. Stupid relationship drama? You flew my cheating ex across the country for Christmas instead of having your daughter there. You've made it clear where your priorities are, so now you know where mine are. I hung up. Dad called 20 minutes later, much less diplomatic. What the hell is wrong with you? You're going to let us lose our house because of some petty situation. Nothing petty about it. You chose James over me. Now you get to choose between James and your house. This isn't about James. This is about family responsibility. You're right. It is about family responsibility. And responsible family members don't choose their daughter's cheating ex over their daughter. Responsible family members don't spend money on plane tickets for said cheating ex instead of supporting their child. Well, we've supported you your entire life. And I've supported you for the last 5 years. $8,400 a year, Dad? That's over $40,000 I've paid toward your house. And this is how you repay me? By making James the guest of honor at Christmas? You're being a child. I'm being an adult who's tired of being treated like fine by her own parents. I hung up on him too. The calls kept coming. Text messages, voicemails, increasingly desperate as the days went on. The late fee on the property taxes was $200. But that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that they didn't have $8,400 to pay the taxes. They'd been relying on my payments for 5 years and had never bothered to budget for them. January 8th, Mom left a voicemail crying, "Please, honey, we're sorry about Christmas. We didn't realize how much it would hurt you, but you can't let us lose the house over this. We'll pay you back every penny." January 10th, Dad texted, "The county says if we don't pay by the 15th, they'll start foreclosure proceedings. You're really going to let this happen?" January 12th, Mom again. "James isn't coming to any more family events, we promise. Just please don't let us lose our home." Too little, too late. January 15th came and went. They managed to scrape together enough to pay the current year's taxes and late fees, probably borrowed money or put it on credit cards. But the county had made it clear that going forward, any missed payments would result in immediate action. The begging got more intense after that. They realized I wasn't bluffing. January 18th, Uncle Mike called. "Hey, your parents told me what's going on. Don't you think you're being a little harsh? Did they tell you they bought James plane tickets for Christmas?" "Well, yeah, but would you be okay with that if it was your daughter's cheating ex?" Long pause. "Probably not." "Then we don't have anything else to discuss." Uncle Mike never called back. January 22nd. Aunt Linda tried. "Family is family, honey. Your parents made a mistake, but you shouldn't punish them this severely." "They didn't make a mistake, Aunt Linda. They made a choice. They chose James over me for months. They chose to buy him plane tickets. They chose to exclude me from Christmas. This is just me making my own choice. But it's their house that I've been paying for $8,400 a year for 5 years. They never once thanked me properly or made an effort to take the payments back. They just assumed I'd keep paying forever while they treated me like garbage." Word was spreading through the extended family. I started getting calls and texts from cousins, family friends, even neighbors who'd heard what was happening. The reactions were mixed, but more people supported me than I expected. My cousin Jason texted, "Dude, I can't believe they invited James to Christmas. That's wind up, even for them." My cousin Emma called. "I was at Christmas dinner. James was acting like he'd never done anything wrong. It was disgusting. Good for you for standing up for yourself." Even Grandma Ruth, who's 84 and usually stays out of family drama, told my mom, "You raised a fool if you think choosing that boy over your daughter was the right thing to do." But my parents doubled down. Instead of acknowledging what they'd done wrong, they kept insisting I was being unreasonable and vindictive. February 1st, Mom left another voicemail. "We've been to 3 different banks trying to get a loan to cover the property taxes, but our credit isn't good enough. Please, we're begging you. We'll do anything." Anything except admit they were wrong, apparently. February 5th, I got a text from James himself. Your parents told me what you're doing. You're really going to make them lose their house because you're mad at me? That's psychotic. I screenshotted that text and sent it to my mom with a message. Still think he's sorry for what he did? February 10th. Dad tried a different approach. Fine. We were wrong about Christmas. We're sorry. James won't be welcome at any more family events. Now please just start paying the taxes again. But their apology felt hollow. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They were sorry they were facing consequences. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Ironically, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a lawyer. Miss, my name. I'm calling on behalf of your parents regarding the property tax situation. They've asked me to reach out about potentially setting up a payment plan. A payment plan for what? For the back taxes and to ensure future payments are made. They're hoping to work out an arrangement where you might resume payments with a formal agreement. I laughed. Tell my parents to have James pay their taxes. He's the one they chose to prioritize. Ma'am, I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation. Your parents could lose their home. I understand perfectly. What I don't understand is why they think I should care more about their house than they cared about their relationship with their daughter. The lawyer tried to argue, but I hung up. Hiring a lawyer to try to guilt me into paying their bills, that was a new low, even for them. The calls and texts continued through February. Family members, friends, even some of my old high school teachers somehow got dragged into this. My parents were clearly telling everyone their sob story about how their ungrateful daughter was going to let them lose their house. But I noticed they weren't telling the whole story. They'd conveniently leave out the part about choosing James over me, about buying him plane tickets, about excluding me from Christmas in favor of my cheating ex. March 1st marked 2 months since I'd stopped paying their taxes. The county had sent them another notice about the upcoming payment due in April. If they missed that one, the foreclosure process would begin in earnest. That's when Mom played her final card. Your father's been having chest pains. The stress of potentially losing the house is affecting his health. If something happens to him because of this, that's on you. I'd been expecting this emotional manipulation. Dad's chest pains are because he's overweight and stressed about his finances. The solution isn't for me to keep enabling you. The solution is for you to downsize to something you can actually afford. Downsize. This is our home. We raised you in this house. And I paid for this house for 5 years. I've contributed more to this house than anyone except Grandpa when he originally bought it. But you made it clear I'm not really family. So find someone else to pay your bills. March 10th, I got a Facebook message from James. He'd apparently created a fake account to contact me since I'd blocked his real one. Look, I know you hate me, but don't take it out on your parents. They're good people who were just trying to be kind to someone they cared about. You're destroying their lives because you can't handle that. I moved on. I screenshotted that message and posted it on my own Facebook with the caption, "For anyone who's been asking why I'm not helping my parents with their house anymore, this should clarify things. This is the man they chose to prioritize over their daughter." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends, family members, even acquaintances were commenting in support of me. The general consensus was that my parents had made their choice and now had to live with the consequences. Several people shared their own stories of family members who'd sided with cheating exes. Apparently, this was more common than I'd realized, and everyone who'd experienced it understood exactly why I was so done with my parents. March 15th, exactly 2 months before the foreclosure process would begin, I got a call from my dad. "All right, you win. We were wrong. We should never have maintained a relationship with James after what he did to you. We should never have invited him to Christmas. We should never have bought him plane tickets. We were terrible parents and we're sorry. Now please help us save our house." It was the first time either of them had actually acknowledged what they'd done wrong, but it was too little, too late. "I appreciate the apology, Dad, but actions have consequences. You spent months choosing James over me. You spent $400 on plane tickets for him instead of having your daughter at Christmas. You hired a lawyer to try to guilt me into paying your bills rather than just admitting you were wrong. This apology only came because you're facing foreclosure, but we're apologizing now. Isn't that what you wanted? What I wanted was for my parents to support me when my boyfriend cheated on me. What I wanted was for my parents to prioritize their daughter over their daughter's ex. What I wanted was to spend Christmas with my family instead of being excluded in favor of someone who betrayed me. It's too late for what I wanted." "So that's it? You're just going to let us lose everything?" "You're not losing everything, Dad. You're losing a house you couldn't afford in the first place. A house that I've been paying for. There are plenty of smaller houses, condos, apartments you could afford on your own. The difference is you'd have to live within your means instead of relying on me to subsidize your lifestyle. That seemed to finally sink in. They'd been living beyond their means for so long, they'd forgotten that most people don't have their adult children paying their property taxes. March 20th, they hired a real estate agent. The house went on the market. March 25th for $750,000. It sold in 6 days for $770,000. After paying off their remaining mortgage and various debts, they cleared about $400,000. They bought a small condo for $250,000 cash and had $150,000 left over, more than enough to live comfortably if they'd budget properly. The day after closing, Mom called one last time. "We're moved into the condo. We wanted to thank you." Thank me for forcing you to face reality? We'd been living beyond our means for years, and it took losing the house to make us realize it. The condo is actually perfect for us. No yard to maintain, lower utilities, and we own it outright. We should have downsized years ago. It was nice to hear, but I wasn't ready to forgive just yet. I'm glad you're happy with the condo, but we're not okay yet. You need to understand that what you did wasn't just about money or a house. You chose my cheating ex over your daughter. That broke something in me that isn't going to heal just because you had to downsize. We know, and we're going to work on earning your forgiveness. James is completely out of our lives now. We told him not to contact us anymore. He was pretty angry about it, actually. I'm sure he was. He lost his backup family when his own family got tired of his drama. There was a long pause. Then Mom said, "We love you. We know we messed up badly, and we know it's going to take time to fix this, but we want to try. Maybe someday, but not today." It's been 8 months since I stopped paying their property taxes, 4 months since they sold the house. We talk occasionally now, but things are still strained. They've kept their word about cutting contact with James, and they seem genuinely remorseful about how they handled everything. But I'm not sure I'll ever fully forgive them. They showed me who they really were when push came to shove, and it's hard to unsee that. The ironic thing is they're probably happier now in their condo than they ever were in that big house they couldn't afford. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what actually matters. As for James, last I heard, he and Emma broke up 6 months ago. Apparently she cheated on him with someone else. The irony was not lost on me. He tried to reach out to my parents for support during his breakup, but they told him they couldn't help him anymore. He sent me a nasty message about how I'd poisoned my family against him, but I just blocked him again. Some people never learn. That was the last I ever heard from him. And honestly, I hope it stays that way. For the first time in years, I feel like I can finally breathe. No more waiting for the next phone call begging me for money. No more worrying that my parents are sneaking around behind my back to keep James in their lives. No more pretending everything is fine when it's not. The funny thing is, I don't even miss the house. I grew up there, yes, but it stopped feeling like home the moment my parents chose him over me. A building doesn't mean much when the people inside it have already betrayed you. What I miss is the version of my parents I thought I had, the ones who would always be on my side, the ones who would protect me when my heart was broken, the ones who would never trade their daughter for convenience or appearances. That illusion is gone, and it's not coming back. Therapy has been a lifesaver. I've learned that boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary. I've learned that loyalty has to be mutual, not one-sided. And I've learned that sometimes the family you build with friends is stronger and more reliable than the one you're born into. I spent last Christmas with my best friend's family. They welcomed me with open arms, gave me a seat at their table, and treated me like one of their own. I laughed more that day than I had in months. It wasn't about the gifts or the food. It was about being around people who actually wanted me there. People who valued me, not my ex. Meanwhile, my parents had to deal with the reality they created. From what I've heard, they're adjusting to condo life. Smaller kitchen, smaller yard, smaller everything. But maybe that's good for them. Maybe without the pressure of appearances, they can finally learn to live within their means. Do I still love them? Of course. They're my parents. But love doesn't erase betrayal. Love doesn't fix the memory of sitting in their kitchen, heart shattered, and hearing them defend the man who cheated on me. Love doesn't erase the fact that they spent their money flying him home for Christmas while pretending their daughter didn't matter. I've accepted that forgiveness, if it ever comes, will be on my timeline, not theirs. They don't get to demand it. They don't get to buy it back with apologies or tears. They have to sit with what they did and hope that someday I'll be able to look at them without remembering how badly they broke me. As for James, I heard through the grapevine that he's already moved on again. Another woman, another relationship. I almost feel sorry for her because I know how that story ends. But then I remind myself it's not my problem anymore. He doesn't get to take up space in my mind. He doesn't get to define my future. He's just a chapter I've closed, a lesson I've learned, a scar that reminds me I survived. And I did survive. More than that, I grew stronger. Strong enough to cut ties with people who couldn't put me first. Strong enough to stand on my own 2 feet without being manipulated into saving a house that was never really mine. Strong enough to rebuild, even after betrayal. So when people ask me now how my parents are, I just shrug. They're figuring things out. Because at the end of the day, they have to, just like I had to. But one thing's for sure, I'll never again let anyone, family or not, make me feel like I'm second best in my own life.